um, our buddy in Tri-Cities, Eastern Tennessee was with you. Is he with you most of the time?
Well, he has been, but not of late, because he's having surgery, I think, in 2 weeks.
I remember him saying that on the Facebook group.
Yeah, that's why he couldn't go to NWA this year.
Yeah, he was bummed about that.
Yeah, because I went to NWA.
Did you?
And the funny thing is, I saw all these people. I think, Chuck a couple times, but I wasn't sure if it was Chuck or not.
Okay.
And I
probably was. I forgot all about it. Jeff, I was there like one day, flew on Saturday and left on Monday, and that was a whirlwind day.
Yeah, I did see you, but I wasn't sure if it was you or not. So.
Oh, well. There were a few people there. It was a good time.
All that's notable is the ballroom was too cold.
Yeah, it was. I think they do that so you won't fall asleep. I don't know.
Yeah, and it basically got colder.
I had a news director who kept one time kept the studio at like 62 degrees all the time because he claimed talent wouldn't get sluggish. They would stay.
Stay sharp.
And Letterman did the same thing. He kept the studio at 60 degrees, so the audience was.
I saw his show in probably around 2004 or so. It was chilly in there. I remember that.
Yeah. That's what he said. He said it keeps the audience awake and crisp, and that's why he keeps it like 60 degrees in the studio.
How about that?
Yeah. So now we're supposed to talk about winter weather, and we're talking about cold studios. So that's even more.
It's a segue.
A segue into that, but we are live, so all of this was actually broadcast.
Right.
So I'm sure everybody's thrilled about the temperatures in studios. But while we wait for people to start yelling at me as to wonder where they got if their invites were missing or whatnot, because I'll probably get that sooner or later. Let me make sure I'm not getting emails from people screaming or something. But for those that are watching, since I haven't formally actually started the show, even though I've actually started the show, this is Polygon Issuance number 83 for the 6th of November in 2015. And nobody's emailed me yelling and screaming yet. So we're doing our winter preview part 2. For those that want to watch part 1, where I was about to lose my voice, with Tom Coombs and Eric Wilhelm from last week, you can go and watch Polygon Issuance number 82, where you see Tom going in and out because his audio and everything kept dying. So, okay, now Chad is yelling at me. So let me fix that by giving him... Oh, no, not that. That's what I get for trying to invite people, lots of people. Okay. Okay. We'll see how many of the people actually come and whatnot. Now, if Doug doesn't come in here, because I have not heard from him in several days, so I don't know what's going on with him. There's John. John's in a much better place. He's the only one that I think that actually has snow on the ground in his viewing area.
I think it melted today.
Well, no, you can't have that.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, now I have Chad, Chuck, Jeff, and John, and wherever Doug is, I do not know. He's probably tired from tornadoes last night. He's the only one that had tornadoes last night. So. And by the way, we are live, Chad and John, so the minute you came in here, we were all start talking at once, and now everybody's being quiet. Like, that's kind of creepy. So, let me get rid of that.
We can get the Slacker board out and get the show officially underway. That's what we're waiting on.
Yeah, we could start, because I don't know where Doug is or whatnot, but anyway, we're previewing winter with these people, Unlike last week where we previewed with 2 people, right now we have 4. Not sure if Doug is going to join us from Joplin or not, depending on if he's actually working tonight or not. But the 4 people we have on tonight right now, we have Chad Sandwell in Sioux City, we have Chuck Collins, known as Charles, in Peoria, Illinois, Jeff Cornish is in Erie, Pennsylvania, and John Wheeler is in Fargo, Grand Forks in North Dakota, where he had snow on the ground and he claims it all melted.
You did. Most certainly did.
So we have a collection of people on the show tonight talking about winter weather and whether there'll actually be a winter in some parts of the country. Unlike in John's case, it's already happened. So I can't ask him about when he'll get his first inch of snow. He's probably already had it.
I always tell my audience that even a mild winter in Fargo would be considered pretty hard for most of the popularized, civilized world.
So before we get into it, and I'll start with going left to right with Chad, then Chuck, then Jeff, then John. Describe yourself for like a minute or 2, and then we'll get started. That would be you, Chad, first, since you're the first one.
Alrighty, well, my name's Chad Samuel. I'm the chief meteorologist here at KMEG and Fox 44 here in Sioux City, Iowa. Been here about 8 years now, working on 8.5. Winter has definitely been a mixed bag here. You know, last couple of years have been pretty dry in terms of snowfall, but typically when it tends to be drier, that's so far at least when we've seen our colder weather. A couple of years ago we had those 50 below wind chill readings that shut down most of Iowa and Minnesota. So looking forward to see what this year holds. Hopefully we get some more snow. We could definitely use the moisture. And, of course, I'm a big fan of the snow anyway, so bring it on.
Okay, Chuck, go ahead. I was muted, sorry. If Chuck can hear me, describe yourself.
Yes. Who's on, Jeff? I'm sorry?
You.
Me? Okay. I don't see myself pop up there. Maybe we got a little delay. Okay. I'm Chuck Collins, chief meteorologist at WEEK and WHOI in Peoria. And we also have 2 other stations. We have a CW and a My 59, or a My format station. And I'm on at 5:36, 9, and I do 2 10s at the same time. We stagger weather, and I go from studio to studio at 10 o'clock. So that's what my day is like. As far as we're concerned, we're coming, if fall were to end today, it'd be the warmest fall in Peoria history. We had a record warmth in September. We had above normal temperatures in October. Today's the first day. We haven't been in the 70s for the first few days of November. So we've enjoyed a very mild fall, and we are in most of the areas in a slight drought situation, and some areas in west central Illinois in our viewing areas about 50 miles to the west are in a moderate drought. So we need the rain, and we haven't had that much this fall. It's been a very mild fall, and we're just waiting for the wintertime to come and see what that brings. But if all indications winter is like fall, we might have a mild one here, at least in central Illinois.
Okay, Jeff, go ahead.
All right, my name is Jeff Cornish. I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania. I'm the chief meteorologist here. Similar to you, Charles, until about 6 months ago, I would go from 2 studios back and forth at 11 o'clock. But we've recently consolidated a little bit. We're a CBS and NBC operation here in Erie. And the thing that's a little bit outside of the box is we have a cable channel called One Caribbean Television, which it's certainly not to the level of the Weather Channel or anything like that, but there's not much competition down in the Caribbean. So we have basically some cable companies in about 20 different countries or territories that carry us in Central America and into the islands. So that keeps us busy. Most of that is just pre-recorded. It's about 15% of my job. Most of my job, obviously, is focused on local TV here in Erie. We average 100 inches of snow, as you'd expect. We're right in the heart of the snow belt. 2 winters ago, when I just moved here, we got 139, which was our 5th snowiest. Last year we were around 110 or so, and I suspect we'll get probably a little under average this year. Most likely, but we'll be talking about that, I guess. Before this, I bounced around Joplin, Missouri, Lexington, Kentucky, and Toledo, and I'm from southeastern PA.
Okay, John, go ahead. Describe yourself.
All right, I'm John Wheeler, Chief Meteorologist here at WDAY TV in Fargo. We also have a satellite in Grand Forks. I'm on at 5, 6, and 10. My shows at 5 are broadcast across North Dakota, western Minnesota. My shows at 6 and 10, I do one of each. I do two. One is slightly pre-recorded. We still don't have the two studios yet, but we're moving in that direction. And then, of course, the one is live. I have a staff of 4 meteorologists here. And I've been up here for about 30 years. And you mentioned 100 inches in Erie as an average. We had 116, 117 inches one winter here in Fargo. The difference is that here it doesn't melt, and that was quite a winter. So it really piled up pretty deeply that particular winter. So far this year, just a trace in Fargo, we've had a few snowstorms around us. I wouldn't call them snowstorms. We've had really 3 events that have produced brief measurable snow, but it was like southern snow. It melted mostly as it fell, an inch or two here and there, some parts of the viewing area, but it's all gone tonight. We don't have any snow on the ground in the area.
Which is sad because he's supposed to have snow already, but oh well. So when we talk about the winter, and the NOAA predictions have pretty much stated that it's going to be temperatures above normal in the northern tier of the country. I think John has probably already said above normal means diddly squat when it's snowing already. So, and it'll be cooler in the south. So do you kind of agree with that it'll be warmer north, warmer than average? We're not talking about 70 degrees in Christmas in Fargo. But do you kind of indicate that looks to be what we're heading toward, a slightly warmer in the north, slightly cooler in the south?
I actually didn't get lost.
And Chad's interrupted. So anybody else want to take that?
I thought it was kind of interesting that the CPC forecast was almost a textbook map that would show your typical El Nino year anomaly. You know, with a strong El Nino, it's hard to ignore an El Nino bias to the forecast. I think that we will end up warmer than average here. At least in Erie, the perception is that the past 2 winters were so darn tough. We tied our all-time record low, which is, you guys would laugh, it's only 19 below zero. Lake Erie, even when it's frozen over, keeps us a little warmer. But I think that at least in northwest PA and across the interior northeast, the Great Lakes states will probably end up a little milder than average.
I think that's probably true here in Sioux City as well. I think overall, the perception when you talk to folks out in the public thinking, okay, they hear all this about El Nino leading to a much more milder winter. For us here in Sioux City, where we kind of catch a little bit stuff from the south and a little bit from the north as well, I think that you know, while temperatures may be warmer, that just opens us up a little bit more for the possibility of maybe a few more freezing rain type events, to where we get some of that stuff that we don't typically see, where we're more snow-capped, or where we have more of a snow event than the freezing rain event. I think in the 8 years I've been here in Sioux City, we've only really dealt with maybe 1 or 2 freezing rain events. So, you know, that might be something that I think, as far as the forecast goes, with the warmer conditions, that we may have to open ourselves up to a little bit more as we head into the winter season.
Yeah, I think here in the central Illinois, the stats, we've had 7 what we would consider strong El Ninos since 1950. 6 of those 7 have had milder than normal temperatures for winter and below normal snow. We had an exception back in 2009, 2010, a strong El Nino, and we had a bad winter here. So the stats are with us, and I would think that the way even things have been changing here over the past couple of months, it looks like we may be trending in that direction. I tell people that just because we're calling for a mild winter doesn't mean it'll be sunny out there and it'll be snowless, but it looks to me that we would have a snow event now and then, but we would warm up and we wouldn't stay continuously cold. So I tell people, when talking about El Nino and a strong El Nino and a wintertime pattern developing, that yeah, we won't see anything really bitterly cold and snow events, continuous snow events on a regular basis, but we will have our fair share of snow and cold air outbreaks. It's just we might warm up in between. We also have to keep in mind there are other oscillations out there that could affect winter as well, which they've done in the past. So we'll have to wait and see how that plans out. But right now, looking at even the other oscillations, even the Arctic oscillation it still looks a strong El Nino may indeed prove to have that mild winter, at least in the midsection of the country, and keep the lucrative storm system south and move to the southeast. I'd be worried about severe weather outbreaks if this comes to fruition. I think we might have a severe weather outbreak situation in the wintertime in the south and southeast if this comes about. So it's going to be interesting, and I think it may have already begun, judging by some of the weather we've had here in the past couple of months.
Okay, John, what do you think?
Well, nobody's talked about the blob yet, the big blob of warm water off the Pacific Northwest coast, and that's, I think, been relatively dominant here in the northern plains the last 2-3 months because of the fact that that's where our flow has been coming from. And so we've had, like a lot of places around, I think September was about 6.5 degrees above average, and October was about 5.5 degrees above average, so maybe close to near record pace. The last time we had an El Nino winter was, what, 10-11 or 9-10, I forget which. Anyway, that one, the Arctic Oscillation, North Atlantic Oscillation just killed us, and that was actually the last time that it's been in the -30s here in Fargo. We haven't had anything that cold since. So, but right now the indications are, to me, as I see things, I think El Nino trumps, warm blob trumps. North Atlantic Oscillation is looking like that's going to stay fairly mild. I think there's potential for a record warm winter. Now, in Fargo, in my region, that's going to depend a lot on if we have snow cover. And we can be very warm and still get snow. And if we do get snow on the ground and keep it, we're not going to have a record warm winter. But if we can keep the ground free of snow, in other words, if it's as dry as it is warm, I think we could be looking at records. I think at least there's potential for that. You don't forecast a record, of course, but I think that's out there.
Now, when we talk about the records, and there could be record highs and maybe even some record lows. You never know when a cold pool will come down. Do any of you possibly see any record highs this winter in your area, as in record highs versus any record lows?
Well, this past week here in Erie, we were in record territory. We hit 78 on Wednesday, and it was a daily record, but it also was the latest 78-degree reading or warmer, so late in the fall in the book since 1873 here in Erie. Now, we have not been as anomalous as you guys in the Midwest in terms of the past 2 or 3 months. We've been closer to average, running just barely above mean temperature normals. But when we look at the past week here, Bradford, PA, which history only goes back to the 50s there, on 2 consecutive days they set their latest warmest record. And yesterday their old record was 66 degrees. Northwest PA, the interior part, gets fairly cool quick. And they made it to 72. So this has been pretty unusual. Now, next week looks near or slightly warmer than average, but we'll be back in the 50s to near 60 here. And it doesn't look like a blowtorch will return anytime too soon. It seems like some of the ensembles are suggesting that every other week, or about every 7 to 10 days, or every 10 to 14 days, we'll get a quick shot of cold air, but it doesn't really look like we're going to hold on to much cold air between now and mid-December at least.
Anybody else want to tackle that? Record highs?
I think John hit it pretty well. I mean, it's really going to depend on the moisture and how much snow cover we have. I mean, that's particularly true here up in the parts of northwest Iowa and northeast Nebraska, southeastern South Dakota. Highs and lows, especially when you get into the brucks of the wintertime, are so dependent on snow cover. As dry as we are, if things stay fairly brown and we don't have a lot of snow, that can affect the temperature as much as 5, 10, 15 degrees on a certain day. So, I mean, if we get those occasional shots of snow where even just a little bit of snow is going to impact those temperatures. So I think it's really hard to say, but again, being a strong El Nino year, the trend is to see maybe a little bit milder conditions. So it would not be out of the realm in my thinking to see that, maybe 1 or 2 days here or there, we certainly could pop a record high. I mean, especially if the moisture in the snowfall is a little bit lacking during any point of the season. It's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, the past couple of days here, we've set maximum low temperature records, and we've seen that pretty common during mild winters. not necessarily high temperatures, but maximum low temperatures as the temperatures stay above normal and near record territory overnight. And like I tell people, it won't be a pretty mild winter if we do get it. It's filled with a lot of clouds, as mentioned before, freezing rain, and we generally get a lot of just cloudy and foggy days and freezing rain and rain in between the snow events. So it may not be pretty out there, but at least that's what usually banks up for us as far as a mild winter is here in the Midwest and Central Illinois.
Okay, John, what do you think? Do you think you'll see record highs up in Fargo? Maybe a 50?
Well, we had I'm trying to remember the date, October 11th. It was 97 in Fargo, and that became the warmest for so late in the season. It was, I believe, the 7th temperature in the 90s on record. Records go back to 1881. So we've already sort of had one cool weather season spectacular record. Yeah, I think the potential is there if we can keep the snow away. You know, one thing that happens a lot with El Niños here in the northern plains and also down in northwest Iowa in your region, you know, you get into that split flow pattern where you just the fog and the overcast and the stratus sets in, and if that happens, you'll maybe set some warm minimum records, but you're not going to set any record highs. But I think the potential is there for some record highs, and also for a lot of foggy, drizzly, freezing drizzle weather through the winter, which is, I don't know, it's its own thing. We broke, I think, 7 warm minimum records last winter in December in about a 2-week period, and it was actually a fairly cold winter. We just didn't get any snow, and there was no snow on the ground, and that alone was enough to, during a streak of zonal flow, to get us. Each one we broke the record like by a degree or two, but so that has a lot to do with it. We need sunshine and we need no snow to get record highs, and that's something that we're not going to predict tonight.
Oh, come on.
Well, I'm going to be talking about snowfall or any precipitation because, like has been talked about, you may not get a lot of snow, but you may get more, let's say, freezing rain, or whatnot. Do you see your precipitation being below normal, above normal, and do you see it being mainly snow, rain, or freezing rain? And anybody can start. I can start.
We're not going to have a winter in this part of the country where the precipitation is anything other than mostly snow. Snow or freezing rain, obviously. We'll get rain, but it's pretty rare, and the ground's always frozen anyway, so it freezes and causes problems even if it's above 32, right? But one thing that'll happen in a lot of El Niños that I've seen, a lot of El Niño winters, is we do get those southern stream storm systems, those panhandle hookers, whatever you want to call them, and those generally go south of us and bring heavy snow to Iowa. And if that's the storm track that ends up being made, we probably won't get much snow this winter. There was one El Nino winter back in the early 90s, and I can't remember the year, there have been too many of them, where we just kept getting these inverted lows on Texas hooker storms, and we kept getting these 6-8 inch snowfalls with no wind, none of the characteristic Dakota blizzards. It was just a lot of real pretty snow with temperatures at about 30 degrees, and it ended up being a lovely winter, but there was a lot of snow. It was, you know, not very cold. Temps all winter long were in the 20s, and we had a lot of snow, and it was really pretty. Nice for playing outside and that kind of thing. That could happen. My suspicion is, though, at the end of winter is that we'll be dry. I don't think we're going to get a lot of snow this winter, and that's really not much more than a gut feeling and what I've been seeing the last couple of months.
And then
I'll chime in. That's a good question. I don't think we'll see Peoria, Central Illinois. We average, we're at the kids' table as far as snow is concerned because we only get about 24 inches a season from the first snow of the fall to the last snowfall of the spring. So I don't think we'll get normal snowfall. We'll get other types of precipitation. What worries me in an El Nino situation, that storm track to the south looks like it runs, like I-10, from Southern California to the Florida Panhandle. boy, every now and then you get one of those that would come up just a couple hundred miles farther to the north. We've got something to deal with. So I'm always worried about the occasional snow situation coming our way. But as I said, it's been our situation here, at least in central Illinois, that in a strong El Nino situation, when we do get snow, it may be gone a few days later because it warms right back up. We don't stay continuously cold, and that's when we've had our most severe winters, the coldest winters, and the snowiest. They're interchangeable because that snow sticks around. Usually it doesn't stick around. So right now, it indicates or looks like that may be the case, that if we do get snow, it may not stick around all the time, and we'll have reprieves in between the systems. And an occasional outbreak of cold air as well, but the moderation on the backside.
And we probably heard about 2/3 of that, Chuck, because your audio is getting a little cruddy.
Okay, all right.
So, Chad or Jeff?
I think precip-wise, I mean, it's going to be probably, pretty close to normal, maybe even a little bit below normal. But again, I think, especially because we're not as far north as Fargo, we're not as far south as maybe Joplin. It's really going to depend on, as everybody has said, the track of the low. I mean, especially in the wintertime, that's what makes winter forecasting so tough, is the track of the low within just a few hundred miles could really alter the forecast from an all-rain event to, tons and tons of snow. And I mean, personally, that's what I struggle with most of all during the winter season, is trying to exactly pinpoint that track of the low. But I think this year, because of the expected warmer than usual temperatures, I think probably in this neck of the woods that we'll probably see a few more freezing rain events, or that might become more pronounced and more around the area than what we typically see in a normal year.
I'll chime in here in Erie, and here we're one of the few spots where the track of the low doesn't necessarily matter, because probably about 70% of our snowfall comes from just from lake effect. And it's a little, in some ways, easier to forecast. If you could look at the huge picture, we don't have to agonize over if the track's going to go over Pittsburgh or over, Fredericksburg, Maryland, or whatever. And in a strong El Nino type pattern, we're probably going to not be dealing with a whole lot of really cold air, minus 25 at 850 coming across Lake Erie. So we'd have to go with a lower forecast. In some ways, though, I've been amazed at how consistent our annual snow totals are throughout the 100 and some odd years since 1873, because we average 100 inches, but we've never had more than 150 inches here. If you look at Boston, some places, their all-time snowiest winter is going to be 400 or 500 times, or 400 or 500%, I should say, of average, or 300% of average. Here we've never seen 170% of average in Erie. So it's somewhat the great equalizer. We always get some, but it's like we have a hard time. At some point, Lake Erie is the shallowest of the Great Lakes. It freezes over. In this case, I don't really think we're going to get a whole lot of very cold air spilling across from the west or west-northwest too frequently. So therefore, it may be 50 or 70 inches of snow down from 100. But here, as opposed to you guys in the Dakotas, it goes away. Even 2 winters ago, when we had 139, it seemed that every other weekend we'd spike at 50 degrees for a few hours and we'd lose most of our snow cover. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. I suspect less than average, though. Justin, I don't know if you guys saw Justin Burke, the former Baltimore meteorologist. He's still a Baltimore meteorologist, but he's no longer in TV. He wrote an article, a blog about how El Nino and typically milder winters in Baltimore don't always mean less snow there, just because of the explosive potential for those coastal storms in the Northeast. They can still get slammed. We can maybe tap into the western edge of that if there are a few nor'easters, but it's hard to say.
Now, before we leave you, Jeff, when you talk about it being not as warm, do you suspect that the snow, the lake effect snow, do you expect it to possibly last longer if it stays warmer and Lake Erie stays unfrozen longer?
It's a good question. We often don't freeze over until mid to late January here, and then that drops the lake effect snow down about 80-85%. It'll still snow a little bit, but it's nothing like what it is. I mean, that's a good question. The Buffalo Weather Service Office, and you guys probably are familiar with Tom Nizol. I may be mispronouncing his last name, Nizol. He's with the Weather Channel. Yeah, he is a longtime Weather Service guy in Buffalo, and he's done a lot of research there. And they've actually found that weak El Nino years lead to a lot of Buffalo's snowiest winters. Now, strong El Nino begins to lose that trend, but a weak El Nino is actually better for Buffalo to get snow, big snow, more so than a neutral or a La Nina year, which I thought was kind of interesting. As you guys said, it's never straightforward. And people think mild winter and they want to celebrate that, and that may mean freezing rain for you guys and that kind of thing. Or it may still mean some intermittent, very, very cold weather snaps. I just thought that was kind of interesting that a weak El Nino can lead to more than average lake effect snow, and that could be tied into what you're talking about there with the lack of ice on Lake Erie.
Now, talking about ice, and we kind of discussed it, about having more freezing rain events than anything possibly this year. Do you suspect, and you can chime in for your area, do you suspect that you may get some ice storms this year? Do you think it might be more predominant than, say, rain and or snow this year in your prospective markets? And I'm assuming already Jeff is probably going to say no because he's in Erie, but we'll have him answer that anyway.
Well, I got to go snow here more than ice. Plus, we're downsloping with the wind from the east. If we're, it depends on the storm track. We're either rain or snow here typically, more so than other markets I've worked in.
Okay, anybody else?
I'll comment. We actually get a lot of brief freezing drizzle events in the Red River Valley, eastern North Dakota, western Minnesota, with when we have a northwest flow pattern, when we have Arctic air. Those Alberta clippers will often produce freezing drizzle on their southern side, and we will get these brief warm-ups and a patch of freezing drizzle that'll last 6 to 12 hours, and then it gets very cold again. That's not going to happen this winter, I don't think. I don't think we'll see a lot of northwest flows. So if we were to have a lot of freezing events, it would be from one of two ways. One would be just that split flow pattern, that dank, overcast, fog, and light freezing mist that can persist for days, which is fairly unpleasant. And that can yield days of freezing mist in a row, which can be a problem. Or maybe we'll get one of those southern stream systems to come up and just place itself right to get an actual ice storm. A true ice storm, like a Peoria ice storm, those are pretty rare in Fargo. They do happen, but they're pretty rare.
Yeah, even here, I mean, we'll get our fair share of freezing drizzle and freezing rain. We very rarely have ice storm warnings, but obviously it can happen. We've had frequent bouts of freezing rain during milder winters. Can't rule that out. But we usually get our freezing drizzle or freezing rain preceding a front or a system like an Alberta Clipper, and then it turns cold on the backside of it. But an out-and-out ice storm, pretty rare around here. We haven't had what I'd call an ice storm for, maybe 4 or 5 years, but it does happen. But we tend to be cloudy, and as you mentioned, we've had a lot of freezing fog in some of our milder winters. We didn't have an El Nino 3 years ago, but we had a very mild winter, and we had a lot of clouds, and I had more of, I think, freezing fog that year that I've seen, and I've been in radio and TV locally 38 years, and so we kind of get the frozen fog from time to time when we start getting things mild out there.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at the potential for my area, which is, again, kind of northeast Nebraska, northwest Iowa, southeastern South Dakota, typically when I think of freezing rain or freezing rain events, I think generally kind of like around that I-70 corridor or maybe a little south of there, southern Missouri. I think being a milder year, some of that may move up a little bit to the north, but I think if there's maybe a true chance of an ice storm or an increased chance of an ice storm, you might actually see it southern Iowa, maybe northeast Kansas, northern Missouri, that type of area. I think might be a little higher potential, if you want to call it that. But being said, I still think here in northwest Iowa, the northern portions of Iowa, our predominant winter precipitation is going to be snow, but I think maybe we do open ourselves up a little bit more for seeing some of those advanced system rain or drizzle events like John was talking about that they see in Fargo.
So yeah, I have a comment if anybody cares. We haven't talked about the southern states much. I have an observation though that the CPC forecasts often will indicate in El Nino years, strong El Nino years, they'll forecast a cold winter in the south, and cold and wet, and that's usually the case statistically. But it's a different kind of cold. Typically in El Nino winters, the south is cold because it's wet. And so those southern freezes, like those Florida freezes, are actually pretty uncommon in El Nino winters, as they are also fairly uncommon in La Nina winters. I think if you look historically, most of the South Texas, South Florida freezes come in El Nino INSO neutral winters. Not all, but most. And so I'll throw that out there for fodder.
Yeah, I lived in South Texas for 8 years. Ironically, the worst winter we had when I was there was 2004. We had, I think it was 5 inches of snow in McAllen on Christmas Eve and 2 inches of snow down in Brownsville, snows that hadn't fallen in 100 years. But yeah, the cold down in the south is certainly a different cold. It's just kind of that damp, raw cold as opposed to just the true bone-chilling cold that we get in the northern plains or even in the Great Lakes. So, yeah, definitely kind of almost a, well, it is. It's a different area altogether.
And I was going to mention the active weather in the south, so John kind of led me to that. Do you think that with the cold, damp weather that there could be severe weather down there, and could there even be severe weather in places that aren't expecting severe weather? For example, and I lead this to Chuck having an infamous tornado 2 years ago in his market that almost hit him. And then there's tornado outbreaks in November 2005 in Iowa, Indiana, down in the south again, even though that's November. But is there the possibility there could be more active weather this winter than there was this past winter where there was hardly anything?
I'll go ahead and chime in. I think if this strong El Nino really plays out like it's advertised, I wouldn't be surprised if the South, especially the Southeast, did have their fair share of wintertime severe weather in the form of thunderstorms and tornadoes. Here, yeah, what we had 2 years ago was an anomaly. We didn't have a warm fall by any means. We just had just a hybrid type storm take aim at us and really did some damage in November of 2013. But overall, I think you need to really keep an eye on the South, especially Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, those areas. I think yeah, they might have to look out for some above normal instances of severe weather during the winter time as opposed to spring. So.
Yeah, we're overdue for that. It's been 3 consecutive years with below average tornado stats for the year, the inflation adjusted tornado count. And I mean, this seems to be the perfect setup that's going to bring California what they need, the great equalizer, finally some rain, although droughts never end quietly out there. And then statistically, we'll probably see something snap back closer to normal here with more severe weather in the southeast as well. I'm on board with that. You guys make some good points about colder than average. You can get there by having cold nights with low dew points, but this looks like a high dew point type of cold, which is near normal lows in the southeast, but below average highs with more clouds. I'm on board with that.
And you've not seen the last flooding in Texas.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think that's going to keep up. Texas may get a lot of the rain that California desires.
Yeah.
Just seems to be the trend. That old adage in weather forecasting, if it's been raining, forecast rain, that works pretty well.
Expect drought. Do you think?
I have to remember that one.
Do you think this El Nino is what pulls? California's not going to pull out of this in 3 months. It's been such an established mess. But do you think this is going to take a serious bite out of the drought?
It could be. California gets its moisture really in 2 ways. Most of it, of course, is that mountain snowfall, and a lot of the water needs in California come not only from that, but also from the Colorado River. And it remains to be seen, of course, if the Colorado River basin is going to get a bunch of snowpack this spring. I think it's going to help. It's bound to, but I don't see the drought in California ending after one winter. I do see Texas being half underwater by some point in the spring. just because it seems to be pointing that way.
They got what they needed back in May, and
Right.
then again, yeah.
But the interesting thing about that was after that, it did start to dry out in Texas again, and then it all started again. And I think it all started with the remnants of Patricia, or Patricia if it's the Spanish version, which was one weekend, and then it jumped it last weekend. So it's like Texas is getting it, but it's not coming from the west. It's coming from the southwest, from Mexico. So that might not be a good thing for California if Texas is going to get a bunch of rain, but it's not coming from California. California is getting the precipitation. I saw the Sierras have snow on them, which was like an anomaly last year. They hardly had any snow, it seems like, in the Sierras most of the winter last year, and they already have some, so they're going to get more, so that's at least somewhat helpful.
I've got a good friend, meteorologist, used to work here in Fargo. Dave Hovde is out in San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara. I forgot which city he works out of. His weather station there in Santa Barbara went just over a calendar year with a trace of moisture.
Ugh.
Isn't that something?
It's amazing.
And that's
It's
kind
been
of
raining there the last few months, a little bit, but that's pretty remarkable.
It's amazing for the continental U.S. that he's not somewhere locked in the Sahara.
But then it's also funny, every time it rains in Los Angeles, they have to interrupt programming because it's raining. Because I think that it's like shocking for them, because and I've noticed that lately. It's raining a lot more in LA than it used to. And I think they're thrilled. I think people would be jumping in the streets because they're so excited it's raining, as long as they're not driving on the interstates and freeways out there, because every time there's like a tenth of an inch of rain, it's like an ice storm anywhere else. People start crashing because it's kind of a bit funny, but I mean...
Yeah, my sister lives an hour northeast of L.A. in Lancaster in the desert, and they were here visiting a couple of weeks ago while they were gone. They had actually had a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings and 4 to 5 inches of rain, which is uncommon for them. But you're right. I've been out to visit and watch LA TV, and if there is rain anywhere, I mean, it's team coverage. It's not only one live shot, it's 2 or 3 from different locations. And, of course, that's the difference in weather. A flash flood out there is a very dangerous situation. A flash flood here in my area, and most areas in the Midwest, can be life-threatening, but usually isn't. But a flash flood there is a whole different story. But, yeah, they do team coverage of it raining out there. So I don't want to laugh at it, but, that's just the difference in what we perceive, or what's dangerous for us may not be dangerous for somebody else, or vice versa.
It's true.
But then also there was this was only a year. I think it was last year. There was tornadoes in LA. I think it was it was last fall. And
it was last fall. I got a video. Huh?
Yeah, and of the tornado hitting things and debris flying around. And in LA, I'm wondering, this could be a year where it seems like a lot of times when they got a lot of precipitation in Southern California, sometimes it comes with severe weather, and you can get water spouts that come ashore, and that's happened a lot around LA, down in Orange County, Riverside County, whatever. They come up, and you get tornado warnings, and people, I've seen live coverage in LA of them doing tornado warnings. They almost are completely, like, they're not sure what to do. They're pretty good at it. But I think this might be a year there could be a lot of these water spouts that may come ashore and may cause quite a bit of damage to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So, they better start learning their tornado type stuff then, evidently, possibly down there. So, when we talk about temperatures, and we've talked about temperatures being above average for most people, except for the South. Do you, in any of your areas, expect to see a temperature below 0 this year?
Well, that's easy, yes.
Well, for you, John, I'd say 10 below 0, because below 0 for you is like average.
I think the all-time record for warmest temperature of a winter, it was 10 or 12 years ago, and it was -12, so we'll go below 0.
Yeah, maybe I should have said wind chills of like 50 below or something for John's case. So does anybody else see below zero temperatures?
I think we could see some overnight lows that get there. I don't know that, given the current forecast that everybody seems to be grabbing onto, that sub-zero highs during the afternoon. I don't think that's probably likely in our area.
Maybe I should use that for John.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised here in Peoria that we would see very many, if not at all. We've had a few winters. I don't know, half a dozen maybe, a handful when we haven't had below zero, and there have been a couple of winters we haven't gotten to zero, which doesn't happen very often. But like a lot of your weather records, ours goes back to the 1880s. But our record below is 27 below, but 8 to 10 below would be a cold scenario for us. And I think we had an 8 below last winter, so we didn't do that badly as far as the cold. We can really see that like that, and I don't see it. I don't see that kind of 8 below as common occurrence this winter at all, because is what we're seeing. So I'm not looking for much below zero weather here as far as that goes. Now, maybe northeast of here as you go toward Lake Michigan. I know we're in a precarious situation. We're 150 miles from Lake Michigan, and although we don't get a lot of lake effect snow, we might get a flurry or two. We certainly can get some other types of wind flow that would come in here from the northeast, and that would put a pretty good chill on us, but and northwest as well. But I don't see very many below zero readings here. As far as the overnight lows, I think we talked about, we look typically at a more milder event during the nighttime hours, with the clouds keeping the heat in and blocking the sun out during the afternoon hours. So we usually do pretty well on the lows in a strong El Nino situation if it does come to fruition.
Now, Jeff, do you see below zero temperatures? I'm not going to say for Erie.
Well, it's
let's say Bradford.
Yeah, Bradford will do it. I'd be shocked if they did not. Bradford's 2 counties east of here, and the counties are fairly large, about 1,000 square miles apiece. And Bradford's already been down to the low 20s. We have yet, I don't think I mentioned this yet, unless it was my imagination, we have yet to actually get down to the freezing point in the city of Erie this fall. We've been to 33. Now, I live 3 miles from the lakeshore, and we've been down to 32 in our garden, but the airport's 1 mile from the lakeshore. I was just looking at now data for everything. Air records began in 1873, and it seems that about 90%, I didn't count specifically, but about 90% of the winters will take the airport down to zero or colder at some point, but about 10% don't. So I don't know if this is going to be a total blowtorch, top 10% warmest winter or something like that. But I think there's still a better than even chance that at some point in the second half of the winter we'll get down and touch zero or get close to that at the airport. That's almost a 50-50 call, which that's not saying much of anything. But yeah, if you go more than 10 miles inland, they're certainly going to get down below zero. I'd be shocked if they didn't. At some point.
Yeah. So when we talk about, and I'm going to try because Jeff's going to have to leave us relatively soon. So. Do you see that with this winter drought increasing in your area or not happening at all with the possible lack of any snow or whatnot? And if you do get snow, will it be enough to alleviate any possible droughts come early to mid-spring? And anybody can take it.
Well, I will. We're in a slight drought situation right now, and we usually don't see that too often because we're running about 6 inches ahead for the year. But the problem for us, like a lot of folks in the plains in Texas, we had 16 inches of rain in about a 5-week period of time from mid-June to mid-July, and then now it's dried out. And we've dried out, so we're in a slight to moderate situation right now for drought. Areas just to our west are in a moderate. So yeah, we like snowfall in the wintertime here, not only for moisture tables but for agricultural purposes. But I think the way we're looking at it right now, the snow we're expecting this winter here may not be a lot to help offset the slight drought we have in place. We need some rain, and the only thing that we've been able to do is the remnants of Barbara a few weeks ago. That's we need a tropical influence system here to actually get our drought, our slight drought, at least under control. So I don't look for that to change very much until we get into the spring. But we're not in a bad situation by any means. But we're getting some timely rains. But we really haven't had. I think we had a 2-inch rain back on September 18th, and since then we've just gotten maybe a quarter here, a quarter there, and that's been about it. So we definitely need some sort of moisture in the wintertime. The big question is what form, and will it be beneficial if it's not snow?
I'll comment. I don't know, this region of the eastern Dakotas, western Minnesota, down through Sioux City, Sioux Falls, northwest, north central Iowa, is this kind of anomalous area where since 1993 would be where I think where it started, it's just been wet. Dry weather just can't seem to sustain itself here more than a few months at a time. Here in Fargo, for example, pre-1993, post-1993, average annual rainfall is up about 20%. I mean, that's really a remarkable shift. And what I've noticed the last 5 years or so is I think we're beginning to chip away at that. The dry spells are lasting a little bit longer. And whatever the mechanism was, if it was a mechanism that has created this wet period here in the north, where you hear about all the flooding coming out of the Red River, the north, and all of that, I have a feeling that we're kind of on the cusp of seeing the end of that. And maybe with that in mind, this winter will end up, who knows, being excessively dry. Now, it rained and snowed yesterday. We had almost an inch of rain about 2 weeks ago, back in late October. Other than that, the fall's been very dry. So we're actually wet right now. I mean, there are puddles. But it seems to me that things are kind of smelling a little bit dry in this area, and it really hasn't looked like this for quite a few years.
Yeah, I agree with John here in Sioux City. I mean, we'll have the occasional 1-inch rain. I think our biggest rain, like everybody else, I think John included, was that 2 to 3 inch rain we saw at the end of October or middle of October, and we averaged 35 inches of snow or something close to that a year. And I'm kind of the belief that we haven't hit that mark in the last 2 or 3 years. I think it's probably a little bit of a trend that we're seeing, and where we get most of our moisture in one fell swoop in the spring, and it's too much, so it floods everything, and then everything's dry the rest of the summer. And wintertime, while you'd like to see it, I think we might get close to normal, but my odds, if I had to put a bet on red or black, I'd probably go red for dry.
I'm on board with dry here in Erie, as I kind of implied, with a reduction in lake effect snow. We're not in bad shape. We're 3.83 inches drier than average for the year. We've had 31 and change. We should be around 35, 36. So we're not in bad shape. So I don't think I think we'll leave 2015 with a deficit, and we'll enter 2016, the first 2-3 months, with a deficit as well. But all bets are off once we get into springtime. I need to go, and I apologize for bouncing out early, but it's an honor to be here with you guys and meet you guys in e-form.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, for being
Jeff,
on
thanks.
as long as you could.
Oh, my pleasure. I'll see you guys around.
Okay.
Okay.
So as Jeff departs, we're going to talk about the first inch of snow, and unfortunately, I think John's already had that. Or have you?
Not in Fargo.
Okay. Did it occur in Grand Forks, though?
Not at once. They had 0.8 yesterday before it
So
started.
that doesn't count. So when do you see the first inch of snow falling in your area, and anybody can take it? And I'm writing this down. So
Of course you are.
Well, I think we're a ways away from it. It's looking dry this upcoming week. If you follow the models, it looks like there might be. Models have been kind of hinting at some type of a Edmund Fitzgerald type hooker storm coming up into the Great Lakes. That won't bring anything here, and it probably would be too warm for inches of snow anyway. Closer to Thanksgiving, maybe even after Thanksgiving. I think it may start out slowly this year.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking first, second week of December down here. Usually it happens, the week before Thanksgiving. That's kind of our average start for snow, but with the trend dryer that we're seeing, and like John said, most of the models shifting north and even east with those systems that do drop, I see us staying pretty dry. Might get, one of those systems where it warms up and you see chance of rain mixed with snow overnight, but as far as measurable snow, I think it's going to be a while.
I think so too. Same way in Peoria. In fact, if any of my viewers by some chance catch this, they might find it interesting because we have our snowblower contest going on. Guess the first inch of snow in Peoria. Actually, the first either one, the first 1 inch snowfall or the second 1 inch snowfall. It doesn't matter. So we have a contest going on, and we're taking entries to November 15th. But I don't see anything in November for us at all. I'm seeing 50s here, mid-50s, maybe some upper 40s around the area. So I'm looking probably at mid-December, just looking what I've seen 30, 45 days out. It's just not going to be warm enough. But somebody will want a snowblower one of these days, but I don't think it's going to be sooner than later.
I'll ship you my entry after this is over.
Yeah, you're not affiliated with us, so yeah, ship it in here. You might be a winner.
Now there's going to be trouble that now everybody outside of Peoria is going to start deciding when the first inch of snow is going to fall. Good grief. It couldn't be as bad as some places. There's a lot of businesses that do this, or they say if snows something or other. I think there's jewelry stores that actually say if you predict when it's the first inch of snow, you get everything free that you bought or some such thing. I think it's jewelry stores, furniture stores, I think do this. So I don't know. That's just.
There's variations. I mean, if it rains an inch on your wedding day, you get the diamond free, or if it snows an inch or more on your wedding day. So and actually, I had somebody call me up and. They were wanting to cash in on that, but we got 0.8 of an inch. That was officially at the airport because that's what the contest says. Well, they got an inch at their house, but that didn't count, so I get kind of in the middle of some of that stuff sometimes.
First year I was in Sioux City, we did tell us when it's going to hit 100 degrees for the first time and you win a pool. Well, we never hit 100 degrees, so we ended up having a blind drawing on Labor Day.
Yeah, we have a lot of blind drawings too, yep.
Maybe you need to do first day it gets below 0. Because at least that'll happen, maybe.
For John, probably. No guarantee where we are.
Yeah.
I've got a general manager that's anti-contest. She says she doesn't like the smell of it. I've actually the last couple of years suggested a couple. One idea that one of my colleagues came up with, our weekend meteorologist here, wanted to allow viewers the opportunity to send in a prediction for snow when a storm was coming, and the one who would get the closest to the actual amount in tenths, or out of a drawing of those who actually guessed it, Aaron would go and shovel their sidewalk in their driveway. And I nixed that idea because I said when he was on vacation, now my back was too old for that.
I was going to say, yeah, count me out of that one.
It didn't seem like a productive way to promote ourselves, but.
Well, when I moved north, my wife said I'd have to shovel the driveway. I couldn't buy a snowblower, and 8 years later, I still don't have a snowblower.
Maybe you'll get one from Chuck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we got 2 to give away, so we'll do it, and we give away lawnmowers for the first 90-degree day. So we do it just about all season long. We have contests galore. So, but it's fun. But yeah, we're not going to give away snowblower right away. I don't think so.
No, it's going to be a while. Christmas present.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of that, and I didn't write this question down, but I do remember discussing this with Eric and Tom last week. Do any of you see snow on the ground on Christmas?
Well, I'll be in Louisiana for Christmas, so no.
No, that does not count.
I don't think so. I mean, even under the best circumstances, stats tell us here 3 out of 10 Christmases we have snow on the ground. So we have run about a 30% chance here in Central Illinois having snow on the ground. It's even half that of having snow itself on Christmas Day, and those are the best circumstances. So this year, I wouldn't be surprised if we had precip on Christmas. It would be rain or maybe a mixture, but it's not shaping up like that. Even in the best of times, we have even a 30% chance, 3 in 10 chance, or 3 out of every 10 years. You take a 10-year cluster of 3, snow on the ground Christmas Day. So it's not climatologically likely, even in the best of times. I don't think it would look good this year, like Christmas here.
Well, when I leave town for the holidays or anything else for that matter, things tend to happen around here. So I'm going to be out of town, so I'm going to say, yeah, there'll be snow Christmas Day here.
John, do you expect snow?
Statistical odds in Fargo, it's about 6 out of 7 have at least an inch of snow on the ground.
So you're saying there's a chance?
So it's a pretty good chance. There's about one in every 7 Christmases. It's there's not much snow, and we didn't have snow on the ground at Christmas last year. So I'm going to go ahead and go bold and say we'll have snow for Christmas this year.
Now, I mentioned this to Chad when we had a test earlier today, that there was one Christmas here, I don't remember if it was Christmas Day or around Christmas, where I had thunderstorms. So, I mean, and then there's, of course, a couple of years ago down in the south, there was a tornado in Mobile that went right through Mobile, Alabama. There was a tornado on Christmas afternoon that year. So, I mean, everything seems to happen on holidays. I don't know what it is.
Certainly.
Yeah, Mother Nature doesn't take a day off.
Well, you'd hope so, because you don't want to. You feel for the poor people that have to then go into TV stations to then do severe weather coverage on Christmas Day or any holiday, Thanksgiving or whatnot. I mean, you kind of feel sorry for them because they have to get taken away from their families and doing that, and that's kind of sad. But Mother Nature doesn't care.
Yeah. We've all been there and done that, and that's just
so that's TV.
part of the plan.
So
I remember the phone call when I told my family that Dad was going to cancel Christmas this year because we were on day 3 of a 3-day blizzard. That was about 3 or 4 years ago, and we already knew Christmas Eve. I already made the call. Nobody's going anywhere tomorrow except I'm going to go in and work all day. And so I got up at 6 and did on Christmas Day and did cut-ins every hour all day. ABC doesn't have any news until we don't have any local avails until after basketball. So I just did cut-ins all day and did the late news, and we went home. And we had Christmas on the 26th that year. But my son, who's grown now, he's in college. He was I think junior high at the time, so that they weren't little kids. But reminds me of the time when Dad canceled Christmas. Yeah, it's the business.
yeah, it happens. I mean, when I always think about Christmas, I've seen snow, I've seen thunderstorms, I've seen flooding, I've seen a partial eclipse of the sun. That was in 2000. For those that don't remember, there was a partial eclipse of the sun on Christmas Day 2000, and I remember that. And I remember there was snow on the ground for that. It was in the morning, and I remember that clearly. That was the only Christmas I actually do remember. That was Christmas 2000. I don't know why, because it was a partial eclipse of the sun. That's like a Christmas present. And
I remember in 2004 I was down in the Rio Grande Valley down in Texas, and Christmas Eve that morning is when the freezing rain started, and we had freezing rain off and on all day until about probably 6 o'clock in the evening, which is when it started snowing. But just before that point, all the transformers in town started blowing, so I spent Christmas Eve without any power, which was always good. Fortunately, the station didn't lose power, so we went to the station for Christmas Eve.
Hey guys, my weather center is in the studio, and they're wanting to do some work in front of the big board and the green screen. A couple of reporters, so I'm going to have to bow out here because their domain is my domain. So,
Yeah, that's fine.
John, Chad, and Jeff, thanks a lot. Appreciate it very much. Had a great time tonight, and we'll hopefully talk to you soon.
Thanks, Charles.
Thanks, Chuck.
Nice meeting you.
See you guys. Bye.
So for Chad and John, who are going to be left, we're going to do the last thing that we were going to do, and that's going to be the outlook for your area. What do you think the whole winter is going to be from start to finish in your area? And Chad, you can start first since we're down to just you and John.
I think that temperature-wise, we're probably going to be a little bit above normal. But like we talked about pretty much at the beginning of the show, is that even though temperatures are going to be above normal, we're not going to be without our pockets of days or even a week or so at a time where we do have that cold stretch that brings us that typical winter weather that we see. That being said, I think all of us who were on the call this afternoon and this evening agree that typically we're going to see milder than normal conditions across most of our areas, and precipitation is probably going to be a little bit less, but just because those are what's being echoed across the area, we can't let our guard down because any one particular winter storm can catch us and do just as much damage as a cold or even snowy winter can do. So I think that it's going to be overall a nice winter, but we are going to have those days and those weekends or those weeks where we have to watch out for what we would typically expect to see during a normal winter.
Okay, John, what do you think?
I think when the winter's all said and done, it will be a remarkably warm winter relative to average in the northern plains, North Dakota, northern Minnesota. And in doing though, we can still get a week here and there of zero-ish and below zero weather and still get there. I look for probably 2 of the 3 months to be 5 to 10 degrees above average, and maybe 1 month to be less than that, but still above average. Precipitation will be overall lower than average, although, as you mentioned, one storm can make a difference, and there's always the wild card. But yeah, warm and dry.
So, there anything else that needs to be discussed about the winter that anybody wants to discuss?
Bring it on.
Yeah, you say that now, and then it's going to be like a blizzard, and then they're not going to like it.
Well, remember, I had tornadoes 2 weeks ago, so I'm ready for winter.
Yeah, but
I saw those.
Yeah.
But just wait, Chad. If you start getting antsy about snow, you may end up getting a job in Fargo.
Well, I'll just call Charles and get a snowblower, and I'll be good.
Oh dear, there's going to be trouble. But anyway, so since you, Chad, and John are the only ones left, how can people get a hold of you to complain about the weather?
They can call John. No. No, my Twitter handle is @ChadForecaster.
That's the number 4, by the way.
What's that?
That's the number 4, and then
right. Chad Forecaster. And also my Facebook page, just my name, Chad Sandwell. So if you got questions or whatever, feel free to shoot them my way.
Handle is @JohnWheelerWDAY, and we make them pretty easy. And I'm on Facebook too. And what else? Oh, I know what I was thinking of. I wanted to comment. Being an Iowa State graduate, you're talking about the upcoming winter. Us Iowa State grads are just thankful that it's finally basketball season.
Let's make a note, John, that Chad is a graduate from Kansas.
My weekend guy is a Jayhawk, so I have to deal with that on a regular basis around here all winter long. He's quite proud.
My co-anchor is an Iowa State grad, so anytime the two face off in an athletic event, there are wings on the line. So
except in football.
Even in football. Even in football.
A win's a win, right?
I mean, that might be the only two sports where we're actually even.
Well, and maybe men's basketball this year.
Well, we hope not.
There's
they can smell us in Fogue.
Yeah.
We're starting to stir up a little dust. Should be good games this year.
They should be indeed.
So now that we've done a sport event and we're doing all this stuff, so thanks, John and Chad, for being on at the end. So if anybody wants to get a hold of me, they can. IWX on Facebook, or not Facebook, on Twitter. I do have a Facebook page, but that's my personal Facebook page and whatnot. I typically, right now, would typically ask for shout-outs, but I think so far Chad wants to shout out Chuck's snowblower that he's going to steal from him. And both Chad and John are fighting over who's best, Iowa State or Kansas. So I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to shout out my high school football team, which is right now playing in a quarterfinal right now currently. So I don't even know what the score is, and I'm not going to look it up until after the show is over. So, and I'm ecstatic because our football team hasn't been very good over the last 50 years or something. So I'm excited about that. So, but you can get a hold of me, IWX on Twitter, iwx@gmail.com is my email and whatnot. So for Chad, John, Jeff, and Chuck, and Doug, he was supposed to be on, but he has seemingly disappeared, and I'm going to go find him after. So this is Jeff Wilcox thanking you for watching this winter preview, and have a great weekend, and hope it doesn't snow a whole lot where you are.